2, 1.
This is Chargers Unleashed podcast. Here are your hosts, Dan Wolfenstein and Jake Hefner.
Welcome to another episode of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolfenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. Today's show, of course, being brought to you by UFC Fit in Temecula, Golden Road Brewery, BetUS, Tick Pick, and Charger Bolt family. If this is your first time, of course, tuning into the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube, as you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Apple or Spotify, or wherever you choose to download your weekly NFL podcast. Dan Wolfenstein. We are continuing our NFL draft prospect breakdown. The combine is now officially behind us. Get a little bit more information on this, guys, as we move closer to April 28th, and then, of course, the NFL draft. A lot of things still taking place in between now and then, and something is telling me that as we get between now, it being March 9th, to April 28th, I feel that there may be a chance, as with our other list, that these are fluid and that these could change a little bit over the next month. So we're going to be breaking down our top 10 favorite prospects today, breaking down the cornerback position. And of course, we have some honorable mentions thrown in there. Before we get into this, Dan, I'm not going to lie to you. I thought initially, I was even having the conversation with you. I'm like, okay, this will actually be easier than the wide receiver list. And then once I got around like 6 or 7, started thinking to myself, wait a minute.
Oh, crap.
This is actually harder than I thought it was going to be. And there's some honorable mentions that we're going to be talking about that I absolutely hated leaving out of this list. I could make a case for any one of these guys to be shifted into the top 10, as I'm sure it could anybody. And I know that everybody's list is, of course, not going to look the same as ours or yours or whatever it is, or anybody else's. So it's fluid. It's fluid, as Stephen A. Smith once said. But Dan, how are you feeling before we get started?
I'm good. Honestly, I'm excited for this one. I think there's a lot of prospects here that I think a lot of people either have not heard of or are not giving enough attention to. But I'm doing good, man. I'm excited. I think the news of Mike Williams coming back, I think now has kind of put the spotlight more so on corner being a potential option at 17 or at round, day 1, day 2. And looking at Russell Wilson coming in, like that's more we have to have on defense. So
emphasis.
This comes at a good time. And when I think of the cornerback class, and I look at kind of like what the Chargers' needs are, right? Like I think we all agree Chris Harris probably is not going to be coming back. So the Chargers are in desperate need of depth at corner, specifically probably a CB3. And if they want to go top end and try to find a CB1 or 2 to put Asante Samuel in the slot, sweet. But I think that's going to be hard to do, to find someone better than Asante Samuel Jr. at 17, if we're just being frank. But the important part to remember as we go through these prospects, again, Jake and I are going to go through our top 10. We'll start with 10, we'll start with 5, go through 1. And then from there, we'll start at 1, go through 5. And after that, we'll go through 6 through 10. The thing to remember, again, this is top prospects for the Chargers. So best fits for this team and what we think would be the best outcome if they were to be brought into this team. Now, again, Jake mentioned at the top, a ton of these guys are going to be either not be on your list, but they're on ours. I got a sneak peek. Jake and I's list is very different from each other, which I love, actually. So stay with us. We're going to get through the top 5 for each of us. Then we'll get 6 through 10. And then from there, we'll go to honorable mentions. So, Jake, as we kind of kick this thing off, what's your kind of overall sense of this kind of prospect class? Like, what do you see from it in terms of, is, top end depth? Is there bottom end depth? Is there elite skill compared to other years? Like, what's your overall assessment as we talk about this?
I mean, from the Chargers standpoint, if you're just looking at what you have, this is a great class to go out and get a guy who could step in day 1 as a CB3 and possibly go from there. Again, we don't even know what's going to happen come free agency. Everything that we're about to say could completely change after this, as far as some of the guys that we're going to be talking about, whether or not the Chargers go out and pursue a J.C. Jackson, a Stephon Gilmore, Jadarius Ward, the corners that they have been rumored to be linked to once free agency opens. Everything that Dan and I will be saying over the next hour could just be complete crap if that monkey wrench is thrown into it. But no, I think that if you just look at what the Chargers have right now and Mike Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., do they need cornerback help? Yes. Especially from the depth standpoint? Yes, because that really got exposed when you had some injuries in the secondary. As you said, Chris Harris, not expected to come back next year, so you're really going to be looking at someone that could step in as a CB3, but possibly have those skills to develop even better as time goes on. And this will be interesting to see this because there are certain guys that could be drafted here that are going to fit completely different, that could either start in the nickel, or if you go after one of the bigger bodied guys, Asante Samuel Jr. may possibly move into the nickel spot. Who knows? So it's really interesting to see how this cornerback class and where the Chargers go, be it free agency or some of the guys we're going to talk about here, could really just reshape the secondary that we're going to see next season.
Yeah, and I would echo the sense that there's so many options and different types, similar to what we saw at wide receiver. Like, depending on what kind of corner you want, there's a whole bunch of different dudes that can potentially fit that need. Now, I will say, and Jake, I don't know if this is a hot take, but when you start thinking about like our top 10 lists, and again, we're going to get through each of ours. The one thing I will say about this class, and I don't know if you agree with me, but it seems as though the top end talent of this class is not what we've seen the last few years. But then like tier 2, 3, 4, you could argue is better than what we've seen in years past. So yeah, I think that bodes well for the Chargers at where they're picking. But for folks who are looking at like the top 10, maybe top 15, like getting CB4, for example, I think is very different than getting CB2. And would you agree? Like, would you say top end is not as good as we've seen in years past? Like Caleb Farley, J.C. Horn.
I mean, yeah, if you're coming off of what you saw last season, I mean, yeah, there's, at least from my list, from number 1 down, there can be issues to say, okay, well, that could be flexed a whole number of different ways. It really wasn't set with the big 3 as it was last year. And then, as you said, past that, again, it's just a really deep cornerback class. So there's going to be a number of options that the Chargers could go. Whether it's, if they decide to pass on it in the first round, there's plenty of options from day 2 and day 3 on.
Yep. So, Jake, you ready? Ready to get into it?
I'm ready, dude.
All right. So,
and you know what? I'm actually going to be a gentleman, Dan, and I'm going to let you start with your number 1 guy.
Oh, you're sweet. So, Jake, we're already we are 1 pick in, and I believe we've already differed on our top 10 list.
Yep, a bunch of people are probably like, "What the hell, Wolkenstein? Are you kidding me?"
I know. Derek Stingley out of LSU, 6 foot 190, hasn't run his 40 time. Again, has the issue with the injury. Liz Frank, almost 31-inch arms, 9 5/8 hands. In my opinion, Jake, Derek Stingley is the best pure cornerback in this class. When you draw up what you want your cornerback to look like and what he looks like on the field week over week, that's him. Blue chip, incredible against SEC competition. Go back and watch what he did against Jamar Chase in practice. Again, remember, they were on the same team. Locked him up. Elite quickness, lockdown corner, isn't afraid to get nasty. I know there was some questions about, 2021 season was kind of, above average. It wasn't elite. Go back and look at what his elite tape looks like in his flashes. In my opinion, his flashes are better than anyone else in this class by far. And in my opinion, if you're looking for the best players, it's one of those things where I look for the top end flashes. Like, where could you see him at his ceiling? And if you can coach that up to be more consistent, you got a gold mine. I love his ability to turn around. I think he does a great job turning his head last minute. Super smooth, insane athlete, great hands. Honestly, he has better hands than most wide receivers, it looks like. Great ball skills, by the way. Definitely a ball hawk. It seems like he is worn on receivers like a sweater. Like he's always attached to them. Very long, sticky arms. again, you can leave him on an island and you don't have to worry about him. He's going to be just fine. Like I said, 5-star blue chip talent, the best corner in this class in terms of pure ceiling, in my opinion. Again, the Liz Frank injury and consistently is kind of the only concern. And again, like that injury is a big one. But my goodness, Derek Stingley, arguably at his best, you could put up against any corner in the last 2-3 years coming out of the draft.
Derek Stingley is one of the most athletic prospects in this draft when he's healthy.
Asterisk, when he's healthy.
Yes, when he's healthy. Size, speed, explosiveness, check. I totally get it. As you were talking about, wearing wide receivers, the dude is not afraid to tackle, has true closing speed. But on top of that Linz Frank injury, Dan, he's only played 10 games over the past 2 years. Jordan Reed from ESPN actually gave him a nice player comparison to Marshawn Lattimore, which I really thought that was an appropriate comparison in that regard. But Dan, if we were talking about any position outside of wide receiver or cornerback that's coming off of a Linz Frank injury, I'm pretty sure you probably hear some teams say, okay, we can get around that. Do I think that he's going to fall out of the first round? No. Is he being talked about as one of the bigger prospects that could see a tumble? That's kind of what I'm heard. I'm not sure how far his fall is going to be, but that's something that's been circulating around. I know he says that he's ahead of schedule as it relates to his rehab from Linz Frank, but Linz Frank surgery is no joke, and especially from a cornerback position, it's just like you have to take that. That's a considerable injury that you cannot think twice about. So again, I'm hoping from his standpoint that he doesn't fall, because if he comes back healthy, he's going to be a tremendous talent for whoever gets him. But I could definitely see that would be a reason why teams would be shy to spend a top 10 pick on him.
Now, flashback to last year, Caleb Farley was like a polarizing topic. Are you as worried about him as you were about Caleb Farley? Or are you more worried?
It was just the ACL for Farley before the draft, wasn't it?
We had a few injuries, but that was the last one.
I mean, so just to give it some context, when the Chargers were picking 13, I said that it was not worth the 13th pick to go out and get Caleb Farley. And ultimately he was taken by the Titans at, was it 19?
In the teens. I forget. I think it was in the teens.
I think it was, yeah, if I remember correctly, I think it was 19. But then didn't he get hurt again this year, Dan?
He did.
So, sometimes it ends up working out okay. Sometimes it doesn't. From the Titans standpoint, look at it like this. The Titans are not afraid to draft injured players. Look at Jeffrey Simmons, because he suffered a bad injury right before the draft. I was pissed because I wanted the Chargers to end up taking him, and then the Tennessee still went ahead and spent a first-round pick on him. And look at what he's done since he's been in the league. So they came back to the well with another cornerback last year in Caleb Farley. They did the same thing, and it looked okay for his first season, and then ultimately the injury ended up happening. So risk versus reward for me, Dan. Linz Frank it's a different animal. I know people are
that's fair.
Historically of the ACL variety, you're able to come back a little bit quicker than expected from ACLs. It's not the debilitating injury that it used to be 15 years ago. So, but a Linz Frank injury, Dan, and at a cornerback position, I just can't see it.
I know it's a big asterisk, but I'm just judging on pure talent alone.
Mm-hmm.
If he's healthy, I know that has to be taken into consideration.
You'll get no argument from me from the athletic traits and what he's put on tape that he's worthy of being in the CB1 conversation.
Yeah, but again, and I'll let you take the reins on the next one. We said this offline, but this is kind of like a CB1A, 1B thing, in my opinion, in terms of like, what is the flavor of corner you want? Like, do you want like the Revis Island type of corner, or do you want like the Richard Sherman type of corner? And like, those are very different styles. Both can be effective, but they're very different. And so I think this is more of just like a flavor preference, but you cannot go wrong with your CB1 talk to us about Ahmad Sauce Gardner.
Give me the sauce. Give me the sauce. The only thing that is, a little bit bittersweet about talking about Sauce Gardner is for the fact that he's not going to be there when the Chargers pick at 17. He's that good. And now, you look at more recent mock drafts and everybody's saying that he has the potential to go top 5 in their class, which is just absolutely nuts. But Sauce Gardner, Dan, I mean, talk about just combination of fantastic size, oozing confidence in his play, terrific handwork at the line of scrimmage, able to reroute wide receivers very, very easily. Dan, he didn't allow more than 13 yards to any receiver in 2021 and didn't allow a touchdown catch during his entire college career, and that is of 1,059 snaps. I mean, that is just ridiculous college production. Extremely fluid in coverage, as I mentioned, not afraid to tackle. We were kind of skeptical a little bit there for a few minutes when he came out in the combine, and we saw what his first 40 was. We're like, in the 4.5s, he can run. It's like even Daniel Jeremiah was saying, it's like he can run a little bit faster than that. And then his second 40 came around, and he ran a 4.47 at 6'3", 190. I mean, he didn't have to do really anything else the rest of that day. And that was one of the things that you wanted to see, just to go along with those measurables at 6'3" and 190, and then to run a 4.47 on top of the play that he's already put on tape. There's no question that he's made such a case for himself to be CB1, and his draft stock has just gone to the moon over the last month.
100%. Yeah, again, I have him as my CB2 or 1B, depending on what you want. I don't want to repeat everything that you had said because all of it is true and 100% baller status. I think the things I like about him, 33.5-inch arms, so he's very lengthy, which gives wide receivers absolute fits. Very good at blitzing, good timing, has that lengthy frame that I think a lot of defenses are going to love. I do have some knocks on him, though. I don't necessarily know if I love his kind of lower body fluidity. Kind of looks a little jerky, but at times I think his technique could use some work. He does play a little bit high, but again, like he's 6'3". Like there's some of that you just have to do. I do have some concerns. I mean, he does try to play physical, but some of it comes across almost like too handsy and too aggressive, which you see a lot of penalties. And in the NFL especially, like they're going to get called all the time. I do worry a bit about I just imagine him going up against like a Keenan Allen, where Keenan Allen is like the expert, or Stephon Diggs or whoever else, Justin Jefferson, expert route running, and they can almost use his leverage to his demise. But look, I think he's a great corner. He can make up ground really quick because of how fast he is. I do think he could use a little bit more size. He's a little thin for me. 190 at 6'3" is thin in my opinion. But again, he has that Richard Sherman archetype, kind of has like that Antonio Cromartie vibe to me. But again, like if you get him on your team is better. Point blank.
Final word on this, and then I'll let you go on to your next one, Dan. The penalties at the next level, you can get cleaned up with good coaching. He can put on the necessary weight in between now and when the season starts. But you can't teach 6'3" and you can't teach 4.47 speed at that size. So that's all right. I'm going to say.
You're right. You're right. All right, Jake, this is where we start to get into some controversy. My CB3, and I believe this is a bit higher than you have him. Hold the phone. Kaiir Elam out of Florida, I have as my CB3. Can I take pause? Folks, you can scream, go crazy later. Let me explain. 6'2", 191 out of Florida, ran a 4.39 40, has almost 31-inch arms. Again, lengthy, kind of that same archetype, a little bit shorter, not much, but a little bit shorter than Sauce Gardner. But what you see from Kaiir Elam on tape is so good. I absolutely love what this kid brings to the NFL level. And if you think about kind of the differences between the two, I think he is quicker, not faster, quicker than a Sauce Gardner. I think he can go up against the bigger wide receivers as well as the smaller ones. I love his timing. Physicality, I think he's more physical than Sauce Gardner. He can play man-to-man really well. Fits like a glove when he's covering wide receivers. He's got that swag. I know we talk about Sauce Gardner, but he's got swag too, man. I think he is really, really nasty when he wants to be, and you like to see that from your corners. He has had some issues with like consistency with tackling, but again, I think that can be coached.
Thank you.
But he's not afraid to be on an island at all. Like, you can leave him by himself. The dude is just a playmaker, ball hawk type. He had a little dip in consistency again this past season, similar to Stingley, but similar to Stingley again, like his flashes are just too dang good. Like, get him in a system with a coaching staff who can bring out the best in him and consistently bring out the best in him. He might be, in my opinion, I think he's a top 3 corner in this draft if he's coached up correctly. I think he has the physical traits and he has the tape and the flashes and the ceiling to be great in the NFL.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, Dan, Kaiir Elam, again, I don't have him ranked as high. It's not too far behind for where I have him ranked, but I wouldn't have him as my top 3. But
where do you have him ranked in your list?
We'll find out soon enough now, won't we? But he's got enough versatility to play in both press and zone schemes. He's patient, plays high at the catch point, footwork is solid. I think one of the biggest questions about him, and he definitely put some of this to rest at the combine, was some people were criticizing his downfield speed, that it wasn't fast enough. And then he goes out there and he runs a 4.39 at the combine at his size, which was just awesome for him. And like you had mentioned, the aspects similar to Stingley, the 2021 tape on him was not the best. And yes, he plays physical, but he definitely plays at times undisciplined. As you had mentioned, the inconsistencies, which is one of the biggest things that I saw, which is why I don't have him this high. But still, just as a physical corner, I mean, there are some guys that have Kaiir Elam going at the back end of round 1. So it's not an insane thought that you have him here at CB3. It's totally fine. Again, everybody's cornerback list, because of this draft class, is going to be all over the damn place. But at the same time, he's not my CB3, but he's a damn good prospect. And as you said, in the right coaching scheme, he has the potential to develop into something great.
Well, then let's just move right on. Let's go to your CB3, Jake. Probably the guy that we're seeing the most mocks to the Chargers at 17 from a cornerback position. CB out of Washington, Trent McDuffie.
I just love everything about Trent McDuffie, man. I really do. 3-year starter, plays well above his height at 5'11". He's an aggressive playmaker, can run outside or in the slot, allowed only 16 catches on 296 passing attempts in 2021, Dan. Now, we know that we have the 2 guys out of Cincinnati and Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant was very similar to what you had in Trent McDuffie and Kyler Gordon in Washington. You had the one guy or the other guy. And I think that when you look at that 16 catches on 296 passing attempts is just insane. But I also think that a lot of people just shied away from him and didn't want to throw his direction. But he's not afraid to tackle. Has the perfect blend of physicality and aggressiveness that you want to add to this defense. I thought he just was nailing all of the drills at the combine. Ran a 4.44 in the combine. In the back pedal drill, looked extremely smooth. Change of direction was there. I thought he just quietly kind of just flew under the radar for how he performed in his physical traits. So he's definitely close to that size be damned thing that I'd want to say at 5'11". But again, the tape is there. He plays physical enough where he plays bigger than what you see in the measurables, as opposed to some of these bigger guys that we've obviously spoken about in Sauce and Kaiir, and we're going to speak about a few more of those guys. But I just love everything about Trent McDuffie. And he said that he did meet with the Chargers at the combine. And just imagining a secondary with Mike Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., and Trent McDuffie, and how you could possibly move those pieces around, that just gives me a lot of intrigue and a lot of excitement. I know a lot of people probably right now wouldn't spend the 17th overall pick on a corner.
I don't know. A lot of people would.
Or maybe a corner, but maybe it's not Trent McDuffie. And I could totally understand their arguments for that. But I just love everything about this kid. Whether it was at 17 or if the Chargers traded back a couple picks and he's still there on the board, I think that he would be a great addition to this secondary personally.
Okay, so I'm going to preface this with I don't disagree with anything that you are saying in terms of how excited I would be to see him on this team, how much of a fit he would be on this team, uh, how well he would play alongside of Asante Samuel and Mike Davis. Here comes the but.
Here it is.
But in my eyes, this might be the one player that I think has gotten a ton of vibes and a ton of praise, deservedly so. But in my opinion, Trent McDuffie is not worth a 17 overall pick. And I would argue he might not be worth like a mid 20s in the first round pick. Now, let me explain. Right now, the Chargers will be looking for probably, like if they're looking for a CB1 or CB2 on this team, I don't think Trent McDuffie is going to start over Asante Samuel Jr. or Mike Davis. I could see him being a great CB3. Totally could see that. But are you going to spend a first round pick, let's say top 25 pick, on your CB3 and not go for like, CB1 on your team, or maybe you can go for like, the premier defensive tackle? Like I see him being a great CB3, but if we picked Asante Samuel Jr. at 47 last year, and he's better than Trent McDuffie, how are we going to try to rationalize picking him at 17? Now, again, I love Trent McDuffie. If he was there in our second round, run, sprint. In my eyes, I just don't see him being as high as other people. He is not in my top 5, which I know is a shocker to a lot of people. But again, great corner, 4.4 speed, good feel for the box. He also is very good on special teams. I think he'd be good as a gunner to help with that. Really good with cover 3, good off the line, good in zone. I don't necessarily see him playing like on the boundaries man to man as much as people do. And I kind of would rather see him playing inside, which the Chargers had talked about. They see him as more an inside guy. Again, not CB1 or 2 for us. So therefore I have him down because there are other guys on this list that I could see being starting caliber corners. But a day 2 talent for me that I love, very similar to Asante Samuel Jr. I see him as very similar in draft compensation as we did last year. I have him as an early second round grade, but look, I like Trent McDuffie. I would love to see him on my team, but there are other corners I like more.
The only thing I'll agree with you on that is that
the only
thing that you said that actually made sense to me was you may not feel comfortable spending the 17th overall pick on him. And I totally get that. And me personally, what would I value over cornerback at 17, no matter who it is? I'm valuing D tackle and I'm valuing edge rusher more at that circumstance. So yeah, I could totally see that. And this would have to be a lot of different circumstances in order to be taking Trent McDuffie at 17. But if the Chargers were to trade back in the mid-20s, Dan, and he still happens to be on the board, I would be all over that. If you acquire an extra second-round pick and you could then take Trent McDuffie. Again, he's got enough scheme versatility, Dan, that, hell, we were getting killed in the nickel last year. So you mean to tell me that despite the fact of who's not there right now, that Trent McDuffie coming in and reshaping this secondary along with a Nasir Adderley and a Derwin James, you just talk about some guys that are dogs that want to play, that could tackle, which the Chargers DBs had a hell of a time doing last year. So I would love it. I would love to see a player like him, regardless of where he ends up getting drafted, come into Brandon Staley's defense and see how creative that he could be with all the pieces.
I agree. Look, again, I love the player. I see him just as good, maybe a little bit less than I saw from Asante Samuel Jr. And I was begging and pleading for us to get Asante Samuel Jr. at 47. So again, love the player. I'm just a little lower than him than most. Okay, next guy, Jake. Andrew Booth Jr. I love this kid. I think he's one of my favorites in this draft class. He's very underrated. I have him as my CB4. You're hearing so much from everyone else about this class, and it's not about Andrew Booth. He's kind of like one of those flying under the radar kind of guys that I don't know.
Man right now.
No. So Andrew Booth, 6', 194, has 31.5-inch arms, 9 3/8 hands, long arms, 6 foot, good size. He has like that, like heat-seeking missile to me. He's like a blur on the screen. You know how sometimes you see like Derwin James? I'm not saying he's Derwin James, but in the sense that you'll see Derwin like flash across the screen and go from sideline to sideline to make a tackle. Andrew Booth has that same quality where he just instincts like click and close and bam, he's there. I think his instincts are phenomenal. Sure tackler, excuse me. Squares up very nicely. I think he does a great job using leverage. Tackle for loss machine, totally puts him in the box, up to like bubble screens, things like that. A tad smaller frame, but like you wouldn't know it. He is tough, man. Excellent hands. He had this insane one-handed interception that looked just like Odell Beckham.
Going with pace and going to Davis again, underthrown, and this time it's picked off.
South Carolina.
A one-handed interception by Andrew Booth. It'll be a touchback. And the Tigers have it back.
We'll make it 3 for Andrew Booth.
The only major dock that I have on him is I think sometimes he gets a little over his skis at times, and his anticipation can kind of be as big as his demise.
His coverage
responsibility. And his eyes
the guy in
fool
coverage
him,
was Tyler
he can get
Venables, the
burned
freshman
badly.
safety.
But I'm hoping that can be
But in
something
this
he can
case,
get
the
taught,
corner became
get
the
taught
safety.
how to kind of get through. Otherwise, the kid's a stud.
Dan, I don't know if anybody's draft stock has fluctuated as much over the next, say, or the last month and a half, say, than Andrew Booth. Because as you mentioned, a month and a half ago, he was easily, people in mock drafts were taking him in the first round, this, that, and the other. He was high up there with Stingley and Sauce, and that was that. And then just after the last couple of, several weeks of going through Senior Bowl and obviously him not getting a chance to perform in the combine, I just kind of feel like he's the forgotten guy out of this group.
Right?
And even saying that, he can play. He plays very well in both man and zone. It has a very high football IQ in coverage, and you see that in his awareness. As you mentioned, Dan, he's very aggressive at the line of scrimmage. Ball hawk, terrific closing speed, plays well against the run, which God knows you need these Chargers defensive backs to do that for how they played against the run last year. But you mentioned him being the heat-seeking missile. I'm right in line with you there. He can occasionally be a little bit irresponsible, a little overzealous in his tackling. Doesn't have, can be undisciplined at times, essentially. And the other thing is, Dan, coming into the NFL, doesn't have as much starting experience as you would like to have for a guy who you could be committing as a CB1. 35 games, only 15 starts throughout his college career. That was the other big thing for me. So there may just have to be some more refinement or some more development of him at the next level. But the measurables that are there, guy plays with an attitude. You love to see that. Not afraid to tackle at all. I'm just going to be interested to where he goes because again, this was a guy who we're talking about, surefire first rounder. And then there's mock drafts that I've seen more recently that they have him going at the first half of the second. So the draft value for him has just been all over the charts. I have no idea where Andrew Booth is going to end up, to be honest.
So I have his grade for me as an early second round pick. But again, I think that kind of points to people's opinions of him are all over the place. I have him as an early day 2 pick. And weirdly enough, this is the first time in our top 10 list today that we have been aligned on our numbers. So number 4 for both of us was Andrew Booth. Ready for the next one? And I think this is a great one just as a fit for not only the Chargers because of the scheme, but also because of just the damn name, man. Imagine having Kobe Bryant playing for the LA Chargers. That would just be, that'd be chef's kiss. It would be amazing. This guy, okay, the other Cincinnati corner, and you could argue he is equally as good. Jim Thorpe Award winner, best cornerback in the nation, 6'1", 193, ran a 40 at 4.54, which again, at 6'1", 4.5 is plenty fast. 30-inch arms, almost 9.5-inch hands. Kobe Bryant, man. his arms are not quite as long as you'd like, but you wouldn't like he plays so smooth, and I think he has. I mean, in my opinion, I think he has much better technique than his counterpart at Sauce Gardner. Like I think Sauce uses some of his physical characteristics just and kind of bullies through the technique, things that are not necessarily as good as Kobe Bryant. I think Kobe Bryant has incredible instincts. He reads the quarterback really well. I think he'd be really good in like a zone scheme where he can kind of watch the quarterback. You can tell he's a very cerebral player, very smart. You can tell he studies the game. And a lot of his kind of like quick reaction time, you don't get without studying the film and studying your opponents. Really good hands, great ball skills, prototypical NFL corner size. Again, super smooth. And you watch him at the combine, and he just looked the part, man. I have him as a mid-round 2. And if he's available for the Chargers at the second round pick, ooh, and they didn't go corner in first round, there is only, I think there is only one other position that I would pick over corner at that point, and it's wide receiver. Otherwise, if it's Kobe Bryant or any other position than wide receiver, I'm picking Kobe Bryant.
I think one of the first things that jumps off about Kobe Bryant to me is the experience. 4-year starter we're talking about here. Very, very highly intelligent for a defensive back. Again, not afraid to get dirty and run support. You see a trend here, obviously, as far as what I'm looking at in terms of what the Chargers need. Always around the football. Again, ideal size for an outside corner, Dan, as you mentioned, at 6'1", 193. Drills, I think, were that was one of the things coming into Combine Week, was that drills were important from him. That was everything that I was collecting as far as what everybody was looking for that they wanted to see from him. And I thought in terms of, the 40 was okay, 4.54, nothing that kind of blows your socks off, but all right. I thought he looked very smooth in the back pedal, and the hip flip drill looked super smooth through that. Outside of that, not a lot of DBs ended up running their 3-cone or doing any of the other drills really outside the on-field drills that the coaches were having them go through. And I think that are things that, you'd like to see that could be an improvement. I think his closing speed leaves a little bit to be desired. I think he's just, the anticipation just needs to get a little bit better. But outside of that, the size is there. The speed's okay. It's adequate for an outside corner, especially if you're going to have him play outside at 4.54. But he's highly intelligent. The experience is there. Again, not afraid to tackle. Very, very good traits for a cornerback. And Dan, I'm not gonna knock it. I'm not trying to knock your boy, but if he's there in the second round, yeah, I could see an argument to be made for that.
Okay, so Jake, that rounds out our top 5, or at least my top 5. Your top 5 was Sauce Gardner, Stingley, McDuffie, Andrew Booth, and then who was your 5?
So I actually had Kyer Elam to round out my top 5, Dan. So again, I have him a little bit lower than you. Kobe Bryant is going to end up being a couple picks down from here. It's fine. I ended up having him at number 7. There's a guy that we're going to talk about here in just a second that's just above him. But yeah, I mean, outside of order, with the exception of McDuffie, we're pretty much the same as far as the guys that we have in the top 5.
Yep. All right, Jake. So we have made it through the top 5 list. Before we go any further, I feel like Let's gotta pay the bills. Let's get through all of these fun ad reads. So, Jake, without further ado, get us some money, man. Let's talk about some bets.
Well, Dan, we're excited to announce that we have partnered with a number of different sports books to give you the best options for all of your sports betting needs. For our California listeners, BetUS.com is the perfect place to bet on your favorite sporting events. If you live in a betting state, then be sure to check out our deals with DraftKings, FanDuel, and BetMGM. And in order to get our special Chargers Unleashed deal, you just have to go and click on the link located in the description of the video below and win with these amazing promotions that we have. I've been actually a customer of BetUS for a long time. they're definitely legit. A lot of different options and sporting events to choose from as far as how you want to tailor it. If you're a straight bettor, if you're a parlay bettor, whatever it is that you like to do, prop bets, you name it, they allow a number of different combinations. So definitely like what you see from BetUS. Highly recommend it. Go on and check in the link in the description below and go to betus.com and sign yourself up.
Okay, Jake. So now we're again rounding out. We got through top 5. Now we're going 6 through 10 honorable mentions. And Jake, we're starting off with the same number 6, which feels so good to say. Kid out of Auburn, man. Roger McCreary. 5'11", 190, 4'5", 40. He arguably to me is just as good as Trent McDuffie, but I'll let you start first and I will round out afterwards.
If I'm correct, Dan, this is the last similarity that I believe that we have in our top 10, if I'm right.
Yeah, I believe you're correct.
As far as where they're ranked, yeah. So good luck. You're not going to hear anything similar from me and Dan for the rest of the show. But Roger McCreary, arguably the most battle-tested cornerback in this draft, going up against some of the best of the wide receiver class this year. Plays extremely aggressive, able to knock receivers off their routes. Danny he had 30 combined interceptions and pass breakups over the last 2 seasons. That's pretty damn good the last time I checked. His athletic traits, his physical measurables, I think are what were making people question his success at the next level. Again, even 5'11", 190, ran a 4.5 40. A lot like Trent McDuffie, I kind of just felt like he had an under-the-radar, just solid all the way through combine. He looked really, really good in the drills out there. Again, tested well. Looking again at the back pedal and the hip drill, looked fluid through that. And he surprised me a lot. I know the testing for him coming in was extremely important. I'll be interested to see how he progresses through that come his pro day and whatever numbers he chooses to stand on, see if there's anything that he can improve on. Obviously, the 3-cone will be something that will be of big interest for a lot of scouts. But yeah, I thought McCreary tested extremely well. And again, what he did against some of the best of the wide receiver class, you got to love it. You got to love it. And that cannot go unnoticed.
No, I love Roger McCreary. When I was going through watching my film on him, he was the one of all the corners in this draft who was the most like Asante Samuel Jr. And I say that in the best ways possible. Now, get the kind of the negatives out of the way. And again, I'm saying negatives, air quotes here. Smaller arms, 28 and 7/8 inches, which is like 3 inches shorter than some of the other guys here. Smaller hands too, 8 and 7/8 inches. But when you watch him play, this guy is a cat and is just like Asante Samuel Jr. Incredible instincts, smaller but very sturdy. Incredible use of hands for pass breakups. I think he has a great timing with them. Very patient defender. Doesn't panic. Really, really quick, short area quickness and defends like the ends, the slants, and all those kind of quick things on the inside much better than most of the guys in this class. Seemingly always in the wide receiver's back pocket. And his play style makes it look easy, man. Like he's just so sticky. He's a pass breakup machine. Great use of spacing, great body technique. Of all the players, he might be my favorite like fit. Not necessarily the best fit, but in terms of like the Chargers could pick him in round 2, he would be a great spot for like the Chargers scheme in that like nickel star, CB3-4 area. Like, oh man, Roger McCreary is such a good player, very undervalued. I think he's getting forgotten a lot because all the other guys are getting talked about. But give me some Roger McCreary, man. I love Roger McCreary. All right, Jake. We are now on islands. We are not talking about the same guys for the rest of the draft, at least for this episode.
I think we got one. I thought we have one guy. I mean, not necessarily in the same order, but
yes.
Yeah.
So your next guy on your list is the
definitely on an island here.
The Corn Husker himself out of Nebraska. Talk about Cam Taylor-Britt.
Let me preface this by saying that the next 3 guys, including Cameron Taylor-Britt, are so closely ranked for me. And honestly, I had to come to Dan even before we started off with the show that I was just looking at my top 10 and I said, you know what? I went back, I looked at some things, rearranged this order here in the bottom three. So these next three guys that we're going to talk about, for me, at least on my list, are extremely close. But Cam Taylor-Britt, Dan, first off, came out blazing at the combine. Ran a 4.38 at the combine. Tremendous speed. Here's some of the stats for you. 18 combined interceptions and pass breakups over the last 2 seasons. That was actually the most in the Big Ten. And at the Senior Bowl, as they like to say in Game of Thrones, he chose violence as he was laying out wide receivers during drills. Against Michigan this year, he was a monster. He recorded 11 tackles and 3 pass breakups. You love the experience this kid comes in with as a 3-year starter, plays with swagger, plays with energy, got the quick feet and anticipation that you're looking for. But a little bit like Kyer Elam, he could be undisciplined at times. He needs to be a little bit more disciplined at the next level as he can get overzealous at tackling and occasionally beat by double moves. But I just like the swagger that this kid plays with. I love the physicality that he plays with. And again, even at 5'11 and 196, running a 4.38, you love to see that from this guy. And I just think that he would bring a fantastic energy to a secondary that you're pairing him with Asante Samuel Jr. and Mike Davis.
Yep. So Kyler Gordon for me, weirdly, I know this is going to sound crazy, but did not make my top 10. He's in my honorable mentions. I do like him again. So for Jake, number 6 was Roger McCreary. 7 was Kobe Bryant, which you remembered before. 8 is Cam Taylor-Britt, and 9 is Kyler Gordon. For me, we had 6 is McCreary, 7, which is kind of a shock. I know this is probably going to get me some heat. I have McDuffie down at 7 for me, Jake.
The comment section, if they haven't blown up already, they're definitely going to be blowing up now.
I know. Look, I like McDuffie. I like him, but seeing where I have him being picked and where I have him graded as like an early round 2-ish grade, I have him down there for me. Again, I still love him. I think he's a great player. Kyler Gordon, though, 4.52 40, 5'11". Honestly, of all of the highlights of these guys that I've seen, I think his toe tap boundary interceptions are some of the best, if not the best. Really good kind of feel, knack for pass breakups, good eyes, really good athlete. Certainly, like, looks and tests the part. Like, if you had a guy that you drew up that would be a top corner in this league, it would be him. Like 31-inch arms, 9.25-inch hands, but I do think that he needs more development in like the technical aspect, like tackling. I think he kind of gets a little erratic at points of conflict sometimes, which is why I have him as like a late round 2 guy for me. But again, I like Kyler Gordon. I just don't have him as high as you. I have him in my honorable mentions list. But one guy that I do have on my list, Jake, I don't know if I don't think you have him on your list. Jermaine Waller out of Virginia Tech. Give me some of Jermaine Waller, man.
This is going to be Dan's pound the table moment, as this is one of his favorite prospects out of this class.
Pound the table for Jermaine Waller. Great play in the box. The only negative that I see in him glaring is the fact that he is 180 pounds.
And
if he could use if he can get another 10 pounds or so, I love it. Now, he did not grade well on the 40 time. I'll give you that. 4.6 on the 40, 4.68, it's almost 4.7 on the 40. I think there were some issues. I think he's going to test better than that on his pro day, so TBD on that. But 9 pass breakups this past season. Great feel for the play, really good instincts, shed blocks really well, which I think is a very undervalued skill at this level. Great ball skills, smart playmaker, plays physical, has a really good presence and length to him that I think works well for him. Give him a couple more pounds of muscle. I think he's good. He could do better. I think he could get coached up in terms of like turning his head around a bit earlier. But I think he has great timing at the catch point. Plays through the whistle. The guy's a dog. I have him as a day 2 guy for me. And I was going through the comments, which just shows how much I was looking forward to watching more and more of this guy. I was going through the comments of one of his videos, and one of his former teammates, Quincy Patterson, who was a quarterback at Virginia Tech, had said that he thought that Jermaine Waller was the better corner between him and Caleb Farley. Now, high praise. Who knows if that's the case, but he has his eyes on Jermaine Waller as a better corner. So I have him in my top. I think he's my number 8. You don't have him on your list. I don't know where you have him, but I love Jermaine Waller. I think he's a great prospect, and you can build something great with him.
I thought coming into Combine week, Dan, and especially after watching some of his tape and what he did in the regular season, and then watch some of his flashes during the Senior Bowl, I thought he was actually one of the more underrated prospects out of this entire group. Not just our list, but we're talking about the entire cornerback class of 2022. And what I saw was a guy who plays physical and press man coverage. Again, as you mentioned it, good long frame, 31.5-inch arms. And I think that one of the biggest letdowns was that, coming in at 6 foot, 180 was definitely, as far as size goes, was one of the more leaner, lighter cornerbacks, and running a 4.68. Now, I would hope and I would assume that come his pro day, he's not going to stand on those numbers. I would expect a vast improvement, and I hope to see that because, yes, the weight's a problem. Yes, the speed looks like a problem. Again, was the lowest or the slowest out of all of the cornerbacks that ended up running at the combine. So he's going to need to put on size, strength, definitely improve that speed number for him. I'll be interested to see if that is his 40 number. What's his 3-cone number going to be? So there's still a lot of question marks for me as things progress. Now, could this improve for him? 100%. I would just need to see that a little bit more. Hopefully, come draft time, he's obviously put on a little bit more weight. We'll see in between now and his pro day as well. But yeah, I would think that he'd be looking to improve on a number of different aspects from his testing, because testing is really important for him. But if you just look at the tape, if you just let be your measuring stick, that I know a lot of people can get a lot of value in here, but his tape was extremely undervalued. And again, you go back to Shrine Bowl week and look what he did during practices. I mean, he looked good. But Dan, I think the biggest thing, if not every test for every position is vital, but one thing you need to have at the cornerback position, no doubt about it, is speed. And that was just a big when he ran that. That was just a little bit of a surprise, and a little bit, I was a little bit taken back when I saw that. But those would be the only things that I could say. Where he's at now for me, yes, he's not in my top 10, but depending on how the pro day comes around, you measure that with the tape, he's got the potential to move up.
Yeah, I think of all of the corners, I think he has the most to earn on his pro day. I think he can make a ton of money if he can go out there and show a good 40 time and maybe bulk up a bit in the next month or so. Okay, so again, number 6 for me is McCreary, 7 McDuffie, 8 is Jermaine Waller for you, 6 McCreary, 7 Kobe Bryant, 8 Cam Taylor-Britt, number 9 Kyler Gordon, which we talked about. My number 9, and I think this is one of your favorites, Jake, that just missed your top 10, Asante Taylor, 6 foot 199 corner out of Tennessee. Talk about freak athlete, and damn, this kid looks good. All the measurables you just gush over. 4.36 40, over 32-inch arms. Actually was one of the few corners who actually did the vertical, and boy, 34.5-inch vertical. Like, give me more of that all day long. I don't understand why more corners don't do verticals. I wish they would. I think that's a huge trait that you want to see in your corners. Like, how much can you jump up at the catch point? I don't know why they don't do it, but I'm glad he did, because he made himself a lot of money by doing so. Asante Taylor, man, great speed, physical corner, long frame. I think he shows some really good versatility as well that the Chargers will probably be looking at for both like the safety packages, potentially. It could be like in the sub-star money area. A little bit of a longer stride corner, sure tackler, really good hands, good click and close technique. He has that ball hawk mentality that I really look for in a corner, especially I think fitting in with Brandon Staley. Was the bona fide leader of that Tennessee defense, which I think should not be underrated, because I think Chargers typically go for captains on their teams. Aggressive play style, still quick, even though he does have the longer strides with a little bit longer legs. He's quick. He has that twitch that I think a lot of people don't have for that size, and can honestly handle his own against big wide receivers. Again, he's only 6 foot, so he's not like 6'2", 6'3", like some of the guys we talked about, but he plays bigger than 6 foot, and those long arms and hops help him out. Asante Taylor, to me, is a day 2 pick, solid day 2 pick for me. I have him as my number 9 corner in this draft.
Like I said, I hated leaving Asante Taylor off this list, and most likely over the next month or so of going back and watching film and studying these guys. And like I said, from 8 to all the honorable mentions that I'm about to talk about here in just a little bit, it's so fluid. These guys are so close together. And again, like I said, I hated leaving Asante Taylor off this list. It was killing me when I was making my top 10, but I think he's got some really, really good potential to move up here in the next week or so, just going back and double checking myself. But I'll tell you one team that's not afraid to look at him is the Chargers, because we do know that they have actually met with Asante Taylor. And then you talk about the measurables. Again, 6 foot, 199, great size for the position, running a 4.36. Had the second most red zone coverage snaps played without allowing a single touchdown. That's 47, and that's according to PFF. 47 red zone coverage snaps played without allowing a single touchdown. One of the more physical cornerbacks in this class, not afraid to tackle, has the aggressive hands and press coverage that you want to see, shows great anticipation to jump the routes, and is impressed as a gunner even on special teams. So for all of the old school Kasim Osgood fans, hey, here you go. Here's one of your guy to give some love to the gunners of the world. So, like I said, I absolutely hated leaving him off this list. I'm even kicking myself in my own ass right now, just thinking about it in my head. So, like I said, from this point on, these last couple of guys that we've talked about through the honorable mentions we will talk about here in a little bit, everything is so fluid because it's such a deep and talented cornerback class.
Jake, we've made it to number 10. And both of these guys we have, I'll do mine first, then I'll go to yours, because I love both of these guys for different reasons. So let's just kick this thing off. Number 10 for me on my list, out of Georgia, Darian Kendrick. Have you seen Darian Kendrick, Jake?
I've seen Darian Kendrick.
I love the way this guy plays. 6 foot, 194, 31-inch arms. He hasn't run his 40 yet. He does have 9 1/8-inch hands, but man, such a strong build. Has swagger and attitude for days. High motor, really good running technician in terms of like recognition and awareness. I think he follows receivers very well. Physical on the boundaries, although I do see him being more inside as like of a nickel slot corner in the NFL than he was at Georgia. Went up against like the premier SEC competition. So like went up against Jameson Williams and played him very tough. Turns his head around really quickly, tracks the ball really well. He used to be a wide receiver, so he's like a man-to-man specialist. Great hands. It looks like he runs wide receiver routes with the wide receiver. But here's the asterisk. There are some character concerns. First, he was cut from Clemson, then he went to Georgia. And then he was arrested, although later expunged, on some drug and gun charges, which, again, not great. Like, that's the asterisk. But there's going to be a team that says, to hell with it, it's fine. He learned his lesson, and we'll take him. I have him as a day 2 talent, bona fide day 2 talent, but the character concerns are going to throw some teams off, and they're not going to want him because of that. But Darian Kendrick, talent-wise alone, is a top 10 corner in this class.
Yeah, the speed testing for him when he gets a chance to run his 40, Dan, that'll be interesting to see where is that going to place him at the next level. Because if he doesn't run as fast as you'd like to see, could probably kick him inside as a nickel cornerback. But outside of that, his traits, good route recognition to battle wide receivers, capable of undercutting passes. He showed that on tape. He used to actually be a wide receiver himself, so he's a converted quarterback from a wide receiver. Plays against good competition throughout college, but always didn't have the best results, so a little bit inconsistent. And again, as you mentioned, Dan, the character concerns are a big one. I'm sure that enough teams that have met with him that was one of their first couple of questions that they had to go through with him, so we'll see what that is. But I think the testing is the biggest thing for him. So when Georgia comes around to having their pro day for him, obviously the testing is going to be a big time impact depending on how he tests as far as where teams could possibly see him at the next level.
Jake, you excited? Honestly, the guy the guy we're about to talk about is arguably my favorite corner. Not necessarily like he's not in my top 10, although I'm like you with Asante Taylor. I'm kind of kicking myself for not having him there because I love this guy. Jake, who's your number 10?
So, I think this is the second time on our prospect breakdown so far that I've gotten a chance to say this. I know we said it once during the wide receiver breakdown. This is the second time that I've gotten to say size be damned. Dan, eventually we're just going to have one of those, like seal of approval stamps just come up in the middle of the screen and just be like, pow, Jake Hefner, seal of approval, size be damned. I love Marcus Jones. And yes, I know the first thing that everybody's going to say, well, Jake, dude's only 5'8", 174. Size be damned. It doesn't matter. Look at this. 5 interceptions, 13 pass breakups in 2021. Special teams weapon with 9 special teams returns touchdowns to the house over his college career.
9.
Plays much bigger than his size. Shown the ability to out jump bigger wide receivers to break up passes. I can't remember. There was actually the tweet that I put out, and I can't the team that he was playing against escaping me. But Dan, it's right in the corner of the end zone where he's literally out jumping a guy who's at least 5 or 6
Alec
inches.
Pierce.
Yeah,
Alec
thank
Pierce.
you. There it was. Thank you very much. And it was just a great play made by him. So great anticipation, fluid hips. This guy has a nose for the football. He's just a dog. And let me say it again, just size be damned. I love the way that this kid plays. Think as a late day 2, possibly early day 3 prospect, I would love to see this kid be a part of this Chargers secondary if it falls that way.
Yeah, I have him as a mid to late day 2 pick for me, but I love Marcus Jones. He played everywhere in college, but again, because of his size be damned, but because of his size, he's probably going to be an inside quarter in the NFL, and that is totally okay. Yes, he is 5'8", but damn it, this guy has incredible athleticism, incredible twitch. He tackles bigger than he should for 5'8". He lays the wood on some guys, has tenacity for days. Versatility is just oozing out of him. It's between him and Cal Austin as the 2 biggest versatile weapons of this entire draft class, in my opinion. He is definitely the most versatile corner in this class. Special teams ace. You talked about all the returns he had. He had, so weirdly enough, Lance Zierlein actually compares him, which I thought was brilliant, to a Dante Hall archetype, which I remember Dante Hall on the Chiefs, man, and that guy no one wanted to punt to him for a good reason. So he has like the cornerback skills, but also has that ability to contribute on special teams immediately. So I think teams are going to see that and kind of bring him up higher on the boards because of that. His instincts translate both offense and defense. Again, like you see him playing everywhere. You see him playing corner. You see him playing kick return, punt return. You see him playing running back / wide receiver. He kind of has that offensive weapon tag for himself sort of thing. Not the fastest, but arguably I think he's the quickest on the field anywhere he plays. Again, I have him as a mid to late day 2. I love Marcus Jones. I don't know where he's going to go. I'm fascinated to see. He kind of reminds me of I forget who the TCU corner was that came out. That was a bit shorter as well. Tariq, I forget his name. Robertson, whatever his name was. Tariq Robertson? Something Robertson. Anyways, he has a smaller frame, but dude, this guy is so good. I love Marcus Jones. So that gets us through our top 10. We made it through that. Jake, let's go real quick. Let's get through some honorable mentions that did not make our top 10, but we'd be damned if we did not talk about. Honestly, there's a bunch of these guys for me. So I'll try to keep it limited to 3 to 5 or so. Jake, the floor is yours.
So let's start off with the obvious one that maybe a few people are asking about. I was like, well, why is this guy not in your top 10 at the very least? And that's Tariq Woolen out of UTSA, Texas San Antonio. This kid, for his size, 6'4", 205, Dan, ran a 4.26. I mean, that's just ridiculous for a guy that size to be running with those type of numbers. So size, the length, the speed, that is all there to be a prototypical secondary coach's dream that you would love to see. Has the potential to be scheme versatile, not the most willing tackler, inconsistent, which I think is a big reason why he's not in my top 10. And only played cornerback for 2 years. So his inconsistencies, his unwilling, or not his unwillingness, but his inconsistencies as it relates to tackling, when everything that we've been talking about with the guys above this list about not afraid to tackle, which we know that this Chargers secondary needs, that's kind of what is one of the biggest drop-offs for me. And his skills just in general, and this was on display during the testing, he's still raw. You saw that during the backpedal drill. Outside of the 40, if you watch the rest of the way that he played, it wasn't the best thing that you'd like to see from corner. So he's definitely a guy that from the physical standpoints is so enticing to have as part of your team. But if you were to draft him, he's going to need some time to develop his skills, get a little bit better at the next level to unlock his full potential that I think that he's got. Dan, you want me to just keep going with these honorable mentions?
Or yeah, go for it. Keep rolling.
Okay. As I mentioned, I had Asante Taylor in my honorable mentions. Again, kicking myself in the ass for that. One of the next guys that I'll go to that I thought ended up making himself, could have potentially upped his draft stock big time, Dan. And that was Zion McCollum out of San Francisco.
Yes.
State. 6'2", 199. You go back and you watch the tape on this guy. Again, ran a 4.33 at the combine. Fantastic time for someone that size. Outstanding size for a quarterback. Always around the football. Dan, talk about production. 54 pass breakups, 13 interceptions, 6 forced fumbles. Plays physical. We'll be interested to see where teams value him, as he's one of the more underrated corners in this draft. But again, it's not like he's going to be a secret for much longer after testing like that. Looked smooth in his backpedal and his hip movement throughout the combine. I think the biggest thing for him is just to say, great production when you start rating off those stats, but who was the competition that you were going up against? But physicality, length, speed, that's all there. So if you could put that into a good secondary coach and coach him up, I have a feeling that this kid could be one of those sleepers that it could end up blossoming really, really well at the next level.
Yeah, a couple things. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, because I know you had Zion as one of your honorable mention guys.
Yes, I did. I actually have him as my 12th ranked corner in this class. I had Kyler Gordon ranked 11th. And again, so a lot of these guys we've already talked about, so I'll keep them to the guys we haven't talked about. But Zion McCollum, oh, does he have a knack for interceptions, man? Such a great job of blanketing wide receivers. He might be the most athletic of all of the corners. Jake, I know you mentioned the 4.33, but he has a 39.5-inch vertical. Like, yes, please. He could possibly be playing some safety. The guy is a ball hawk. You mentioned his height, his size. Really good hand, sure tackler. Can play inside, outside. Love Zion McCollum. Love that you brought him up, because I would have if he didn't.
Yes, I was definitely going to be doing that. And then my last honorable mention before I kick it over to Dan is Joshua Williams out of Fayetteville State. Joshua Williams is one of the more underrated prospects in this draft. And again, just because the size pops off the chart for you, 6'3", 195, ran a 4.57 at the 40. You were hoping for a little bit faster, considering, what you see from the likes of a guy of the same size as Sauce Gardner. But you put on the tape of this kid, and all over the place, he's making plays. Again, small school prospect coming out of Fayetteville State, but he's got tremendous upside. Great size for the position, quick feet, plays fast, has good closing speed. Again, low level of competition, but has those next level traits that could project well at the next level. I thought during bowl week, I thought that a lot of people were starting to really watch him a little bit. And again, I think he was underrated coming into this. So it'll be interesting to see if he ends up sitting on that time of a 4.57 or if he looks to improve that. But, later rounds, not too late, but later rounds, I could definitely see someone taking a swing on this kid and potentially getting a great developmental quarterback.
So there's a bunch of guys that I have on my honorable mentions list. Most of them you've kind of talked through. I do want to go through some of the guys. I mean, obviously you talked about Cam Taylor Britt that I really like. I really like Marcus Jones, obviously. There's a couple guys I do want to talk about that aren't necessarily going to be, they're not like my next best corners, but someone that I want you guys to take a look at in terms of like day 3 sleepers, that if the Chargers pick up one of these guys, they are in for a great steal, kind of in that diamond in the rough category. Not quite there, but they're the ones that I think are going to get, whoever picks them up is going to get defined. A couple guys. Monteric Brown out of Arkansas. Love what he does. Great length, 6 foot, 196, very sturdy, pretty good hands, spectacular diving interceptions. You should see the one he has against Texas A&M. I have him as like a late day 2, early day 3. He's very quick, instincts really, really good. He has longer arms, which is nice, and he has impressive click and close at the top of routes, which I think helps him the most with pass breakups. Great physique, Monteric Brown of Arkansas. Another one, Jake. I have 2 more. One, Cordell Flott out of LSU. I have him as late day 2, early day 3 prospect. A little bit thinner, but is tall. 6'2", again, thin. 170, needs to put on probably 15 pounds of muscle. But as a slot corner, you cannot take away what this guy has done from a productivity perspective. Jake, this guy led all of NCAA in catches allowed, passer rating, and coverage grade amongst slot corners at an 88.2 coverage grade. Led college. Don't let that fool you. He played alongside Derek Stingley. He is a very good corner. It was often overlooked because of the other guy, but Cordell Flott is going to be a good cornerback in this game, especially if they can get him with some muscle. A lot of versatility, very aggressive. Last guy I have, Jake, Tariq Castro Field out of Penn State, 6'1", 4'4" speed, great instincts, physical corner, really good blitzer in the box. And how many corners? I think there's one other corner. I don't remember who it was, but he's one of 2 corners that I have seen that picked off and intercepted, or read and intercepted a running back screen after lining up outside, and did this exact thing against Michigan. Blasted through the offensive line blocks, intercepted the quarterback on a running back screen pass. Just a smart kid, good feel for the game, very smooth. I have him for me as like an early day 3 guy. Whew. Okay, I think we've gone through, like, literally, I think we've gone through 20 guys. Are there any others who want to put a flyer out before we wrap this one up?
I think it'll put a bow on it now, but Dan, when we come back to this in a couple of weeks, which we will, I have a good feeling that it's going to look completely different than what the list is now. There's just, like we said, it is a deep, deep class at corner. And for the Chargers who don't necessarily, as far as this class goes, as far as the CB1, that's all up the top. But the Chargers aren't necessarily looking at a CB1 as far as draft class goes. Free agency, no, that's a different story. We'll see, obviously, what that has to that's going to change this whole barometer if it ends up going that way here in the next week or so. But it's a great class if you're looking for a guy who can step in on day 1 as a CB2 or a CB3 for the Chargers. Extremely deep cornerback class. A lot of guys on here that we didn't even get a chance to mention, but I'm sure we will over the next couple of episodes.
All right, Jake, I'm going to ask you the same question, last question before we wrap out of here, as we did on the other podcasts for the other prospect breakdowns. Day 1, day 2, day 3. Realistic.
Oh, man.
Realistic. You can give a scenario where people trade back, whatever you want to do. But day 1, day 2, day 3. Who's your realistic home run pick?
See, for me now, and Mike Williams obviously signing his long-term deal, that takes wide receiver out of this mark. And how I originally had my priorities ranked before any of this even happened, it was still edge and D tackle were like my 1A, 1B as far as position. Then it went corner, then it went wide receiver. So wide receiver to me now is really off the board as far as, maybe a small percentage chance depending on who's there. Maybe give it 2% at this point at 17. So cornerback would be still not my top choice at 17, would be still my number 3 option if I was forced to make one. But looking at these guys, if you gave me a trade down scenario and you're back in the early to mid 20s, I could see a case being made for a Trent McDuffie, or I could see a case possibly even be made for a Kyrie Elam in that back half of that round 1. So those would probably be the 2 that I would say that I would target there. Realistically, who's going to be on the board for the Chargers in round 2? And we were looking at some of these guys. Dan, you had mentioned Kobe Bryant. I think Cam Taylor-Britt would be a great fit in that circumstance. Roger McCreary, obviously, there would be realistic. I have no idea, again, where Andrew Booth Jr. is going to go. Really have no idea, but I don't expect him to be on the board by the time that the Chargers roll back around in the second round. So
I agree.
It'll be interesting to see, because I think after day one, you're going to see a lot of teams start running on corners on day two. So it'll be interesting to see who's left on the board. And then day three, Kyler Gordon is a guy that I know a lot of people have been slotting as a round 2 pick. I've seen it a lot. The combine may have changed things a little bit for him. But again, by supply and demand, he still could end up being a second round pick. Marcus Jones, to me, day 3, I think is solid for him. He's right on that fringe. Dan, I know you were just a little bit higher on where you project him at, maybe in the back end of round 3, but I could see him right on that fringe of round 3 or 4. And yeah, some of the honorable mentions, guys, Asante Taylor.
Yes.
Asante Taylor, I would love to say is going to end up in round 2. I would love to see the Chargers possibly take him in round 4, first round on day 3. But who the hell knows? Zion McCollum, Joshua Williams, these guys that I have mentioned, I think are all realistic options for day 3. But simply because of supply and demand, Dan, and how we have learned now, especially with Russell Wilson coming into the division and already having to contend with Patrick Mahomes, you can't have enough good DBs. And as Brandon Staley said, they are going to be putting an emphasis on corner, whether it's this off season or off seasons moving forward. Brandon Staley is going to keep reloading that cornerback position because the Chargers are going to need it. So there's probably going to be plenty of guys that we have not even mentioned on this list that are going to end up being targets for the Chargers if they intend to address the cornerback position on, let's just say, day 3.
Yeah, I honestly like all your picks. Asante Taylor, man, that'd be sweet if he somehow fell. Like, yes, please sign me up.
I doubt it. But
Roger McCreary, day 2.
Again, Asante Taylor. Oof. I mean, Asante Taylor to me is like one of those. It's a fringe. It's one of those fringe things for me. It's really hard to place him. I think his draft stock definitely got elevated for what he did in the cornerback. Roger McCreary, I don't know. This is another guy whose draft stock has considerably
McCreary and McDuffie to me are like
fluctuated.
They're like the same. Like if McDuffie or if Roger
again,
McCreary.
I don't expect Roger McCreary to be on the board by the time that the Chargers are making their second round pick.
Okay.
Do I think that he's going to go in the second round? Yes, I do. Do I think it would be ridiculous if he was to last until when the Chargers pick in round 2? I would be saying, what the hell have the other 16 teams ahead of us done in that?
That would be like Asante Samuel last year.
It would be. So that would be, if he was there in round 2, hell yeah, give me some of that. Definitely.
Okay, question. Would you take him or Cal Austin? Let's say both are there, second round.
I can't shy away from Cal Austin. I can't do it. I can't do it. You put him in the offense with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, you get that speed factor that you've been looking for. Talk about a weapon for Justin Herbert to pair him along with your other speed guy and Jalen Guyton. Now you're in business. Now you're talking about really contending with the Kansas City Chiefs for the AFC West.
This is going to be a fun one. Jake, we got through it. We have made our way through wide receiver, made our way through interior defensive line. We made our way through corner. Can't wait for the next episode. What position are we doing next?
I don't think we've been fully decided, but you know what? I've got a lot of other things that I have going on over the next week and a half that I
kind of busy.
I haven't even given much thought to it yet. So,
and that's okay. That is okay. All right, guys, let's put a bow on this for Jake Hefner. You can find him at Jake D. Hefner, myself at Chargers Homer on Twitter. Again, LAC_Unleashed on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, as well as YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe button. Hit the notifications so you get notified whenever we have something come out, i.e. special guest episodes coming soon. Until then, good afternoon, good evening, and good night from Chargers Unleashed. We'll talk to you next time as we go through the next position breakdown, maybe free agents, maybe special guests. Who knows? Hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed.